Good morning, everybody.
Good
Hopefully
morning.
my internet doesn't explode trying to run the prezo and talk to you with my face being visible. So hopefully most of you are aware that we are in the process of redesigning and kind of rehabilitating in some respects our downtown wayfinding system. So last year, which seems like a lifetime ago, we engaged Progressive A&E and RLR Associates to begin that process. We've been meeting pretty regularly with downtown stakeholders, residents, business owners, other community members to get a lot of good feedback and input on what works about the current wayfinding system, what doesn't, and what does a new wayfinding system need to look like. So I have invited Brianna here from RLR Associates, who's going to kind of walk us through where we sort of have landed with our design for the new wayfinding system, and understanding that there will probably be a little tweaks beyond what we see here today, but ultimately what we're going to look at is pretty close to the final product. So I'm going to disappear now, and I'm going to hand it over here to Bree.
Thanks, Melvin, and thank you guys for having us. So I am Brianna Metzger with RLR Associates, based in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I am joined by Nikki Shear, who's our project manager. And just a little background: we are experiential graphic design designers, and our studio focuses on connecting people to place. So understanding how an audience needs to move through a place and how they should be impacted, and what key messages should be delivered to enhance their experience. So glad to be working on this project with Progressive A&E and with DGRI on this, and looking forward to catching you guys up on our status of the project to date, but then a little background as to how we got here as well. So. And we can talk through. So what you'll see here today is a little background, as like I mentioned, as to how we've got here today is working with the steering committee for this project, which is made up of our business stakeholders here in the downtown, and our key leaders in the city, but then also neighborhood association leaders as well, with developing design goals for the wayfinding system. So that would help us to, moving forward, how our sign system needs to function, and what key messages need to be delivered through the sign system, and how should that system function for our downtown leaders and our city leaders as well, integrating this into the overall downtown experience. And moving forward from there, after developing our design goals, we developed a wayfinding strategy and findings report that has considered all of the existing conditions within the downtown. Pretty comprehensive study of key touch points in the visitor experience, from parking to transit to skywalk, to those key arrival points. We've considered all these conditions, but developing those design goals from there to coincide with how we understand visitors will need to move through the downtown, and then also picking up on one key aspect, which is the actual design of the sign system. And what you'll see here today is the selected sign family design, which is a conceptual, refined design of that system that we will look through some key sign types that will help represent that look and feel, but we'll be pursuing further to the full sign family, which you'll see here as a list of sign types that we feel are needed to address all of the needs of our audiences throughout their visit through the downtown, and then a key schedule for next steps. So as we take a look at our design goals here, just to reiterate how our sign system needs to function within the downtown. One of the key things that we'll see here today is how we unify the downtown brand. So we are working with the steering committee to develop that distinctive, cohesive sign system, but also thinking of ways to acknowledge our surrounding downtown neighborhoods and districts in a consistent way that they are accentuating their identity as well, but then having that cohesive framework to express those identities. We're also looking to, within the sign system, to welcome our visitors and have a very pronounced sense of arrival and starting that excitement for visiting and exploring downtown. We also need to guide our motorists to visitor parking opportunities. So then we're encouraging that walkability throughout the downtown by being able to, visitors being able to easily identify those parking locations within downtown. But then how do I move through, whether it's I am walking or whether I'm using transit to get to my destination. We also want to encourage through messaging, encourage a locally focused downtown and surrounding downtown visit experience. So we are emphasizing those restaurants, those businesses and attractions that are in the downtown through our sign devices. So there's an encouragement to stay downtown. And we also want to communicate as a multi-layered interconnected system. So I've mentioned that we have all these touch points for a visitor, right? That you're moving from your car to parking, but then also to potentially transit, using e-scooters or the bike share programs. We want to be able to have sign devices that are helping visitors at each of these points, no matter what mode of transit that I'm using to get to my destination, that I have the information that I need to orient myself and to get to where I need to go. But then also aiding these visitors in finding their destination by providing multi-layered information, right? So you're in multi ways of delivering the information. So addressing our visually impaired audiences and finding technology that our devices can carry to communicate that same information for those that are not visually impaired, considering multilingual ways of delivering that information. So to address audiences that need, that translation. But again, helping our visitors orient themselves to where they are, directing them to where they need to go, but providing other helpful information that can get them to their preferred route. But even with this sign system that it provides kind of this functional piece, we also want to provide more of an emotional, but also kind of a historic experience, right? With telling the history of downtown Grand Rapids in an exciting way. There may be some interpretive opportunities that this system could include as well, in kind of understanding this and creating this kind of greater appreciation for being in this destination and helping to create that memorable experience. So there's this historical component that we could integrate with the sign system as well. But then also, in kind of the final goal that we've established here is to use commonly understood terminology for destinations and for districts. So then the downtown local communication is the same as a first-time visitor, that these sign devices will sort of carry what is most understood for all audiences, and there's clarity and there's no uncertainty as to naming and terminology for destinations and areas within the downtown. So these were kind of the goals understood by the steering committee as these prioritized things that the sign system should accomplish, and that is what we have moved to in considering for messaging and sign locations and just all of the things that the wayfinding strategy will include. So. And then we can move to the next slide. So we have gone through with the steering committee in understanding what are those key attributes or characteristics that help to define the downtown experience. What is the mood and the tone that we want to reach with the look and feel of the sign system, and that helps to kind of overall brand the downtown area. And we've kind of gone to that the river is kind of this key piece that we want to illustrate. And we've kind of come to a statement that that the theme of the river is kind of building this branding framework for representing these diverse and exciting experiences in the downtown. So the river can carry this origin story and this reflection of heritage through the river and its presence in the downtown. It's kind of that prominent piece that you have in the area. It's creating that longevity. It's a theme and a brand that will stay for the duration of the downtown, and is kind of this also carrying the future of the downtown, right? So improving the river and being so focused on the sustainability of the river, but then also being active on the river and finding new ways to engage. It's very forward thinking. It's experiencing the river in a new way. But there's also this embracing of art. So there's this opportunity that we have to also kind of mention and sort of feature this sculptural love in the downtown, that there's this art that's so present and is amazing to see when you're visiting the downtown, that we can still carry through with the sign devices, that these are sort of art pieces themselves, that there's something unique and engaging to look at with the system in that look and feel. But we're also wanting to be inclusive, right? So thinking of ways to represent these diverse groups that are within the downtown through the sign system. So there's a lot with the river that we sort of took on as a direction for the overall sign look and feel. So looking forward to showing that today. And then we can go to the next slide. So we are going to go through the selected sign family design and looking at that design through a few representative sign types. And the first sign type that we're looking at here today is a gateway. So we understand that through a gateway that there are key entry points along the interstate that we want to capture audiences that are coming from out of state, or they're coming from our regional areas here in the state. We want to be able to design a gateway for that specific condition. And we kind of have these, just from our study, these various opportunities that we could have our sign be designed specifically for that area, but then still be very cohesive with the overall sign system look and feel. So this is a representative rendering of what a gateway could look like in this particular location, but also being mindful that there's still this rhythm of cascading rapids that we're starting to use here as that iconic feature for the design. So you can kind of see with these different light metal panels, being able to have color here as an opportunity, lighting as an opportunity, but then also impacting the landscape so that you have a greater presence with that sign. So with gateways, you have all of these considerations that you can play with to impact the environment in which we're designing for, but then having that identity as the key message here at these arrival points, that I have arrived to downtown Grand Rapids. So that's something that we want to make sure that we have as a prominent piece with these gateways is, again, as we said before, kind of creating that excitement that I have arrived at downtown. So here's the gateway conceptual design, and again, that would change depending on the site for each of our gateways. Here we have our welcome sign design, and again, playing off of this cascading rapids idea where you're having these layered panels in this kind of river wave shape, playing off of different tones for representing river. But again, color could also be another opportunity for us to represent different districts of downtown or represent different groups. It could expand beyond the blue. I think this would definitely work and be flexible for how we want to have this kind of presence in diversity. So for our welcome sign, We see the locations here being for our major roadways, so not necessarily our interstate entry points, but could be other roadways that are starting to define our DDA boundary. So you would see most of these kind of post panel signs for helping to define that boundary. And for our directional, large vehicular directionals, these will be our sign devices that will deliver destination messaging to our motorists. So this is, again, our key place for directing to parking, but then also from a motorist standpoint, I have to understand where my destination is and get me to that general area. So then I can, either find parking either close to or kind of proximate to my destination. But it is also carrying that sense of identity as well. You can see here that we're also carrying the city brand as well for each of our sign devices, and kind of being flexible and sensitive to, let's find ways to integrate that city brand on this sign system. But also being able to deliver these prioritized destinations. We've worked with the steering committee to really narrow in on where we would like our visitors to go. So we have our prioritized list, and what you're seeing here today is kind of a representation of what that messaging would look like. But also with these, this design of the sign would meet our Department of Transportation criteria for number of messages per panel, and for character height and contrast. So we're kind of meeting those key points there, understanding that this could be a double-sided sign, and again, kind of creating that sense of layering and cascading rapids with these panels that are pin-mounted together to sort of create that dimensional effect and sense of rhythm and flow. And we also have a pedestrian kiosk as well. And this is kind of a representation of that vehicular directional in the environment. The only representational, I would just kind of take this as a way to see this in environment. It's not the actual placement. And here we have our pedestrian kiosk. And here we would see the different ways that we could deliver our information for pedestrians. As I'm walking through the downtown, what information do I need to get myself to the right area, get myself back to parking, find the nearest transit stop, then also like what is the way to Grand River Corridor or to Hardside. This is a very multi-layered sign device that we're showing as static here, but could also be interactive. We would design this for opportunities for both, whether that is a digital vinyl print that you're able to put in as a static element, or being able to work with some third-party software that could help us with creating that interactive wayfinding experience. But here you can see that we're identifying the street. We're finding ways to help you orient yourself with where you are, providing directional information to destinations, and then using map graphics to again help users orient themselves to where they are, and listing those key restaurants and businesses and attractions within the downtown that I am also close to. It is within a 5 to 7 minute walk. We're carrying the brand for the city as well, but then you can also see with how we have some playful opportunities for showing the cascading rapids here, and with this kind of ground-mounted sign, being able to have the layered panels to achieve that idea of cascading rapids and creating some really cool movement here with the different colored blue panels here. And some of the graphics are not showing up completely. There's some missing fonts and colors, but the overall idea here is kind of, you can kind of see here, you would actually have a metal base there at the bottom, so being sensitive to snow, so not having any important information, within that kind of 3-foot or kind of 2-foot range from the ground, that all the important information is going to be above that level. Just being mindful of snow and things that mowers or and so forth that could hit the sign, but we want to be able to be sensitive to clearing that kind of 2-foot zone there at the ground. And you can see the sign here in the environment. And this is a representation of the 3 sign types that we have here today that are reflecting that look and feel of the sign system. And I think we also the listing for the full sign family and what sign devices will we develop to address these visitor touch points. So again, we have arrival, a series of gateways, looking to develop a neighborhood district ID, either a post panel sign or through street banners, creating a system that would help our neighborhoods have that cohesive delivery of application. Then also including street name signs and what that street name sign will look like with this new system. We have our directionals, whether 4-line or 3-line, could include pedestrian directionals, and our kiosks, series of identity signs for parking, whether that be flag mounted or ground mounted, at our lots, in our garages, but also for our bicycle parking ID or our electric vehicle parking IDs. We're designing for transit, so at our stops, at our stations, we would develop a destination map that can help visitors, get to their destination from that stop. Looking at skywalk as well, so some interior signage, directionals, overhead directionals, or wall-mounted, flag-mounted directionals throughout the skywalk system that you would see, and then also an informational kiosk as well, and trails. So looking at the River Edges Trail and the Grand River Corridor, how do we get visitors to destinations from that corridor and kind of use that as a way to be a new transportation option and system as well. So taking this system and expanding it to the trails is something that we're looking at, providing that regulatory signs for safety and crossing our key vehicular intersections, but then also interpretive signage. This is kind of where we see the home for telling that Grand Rapids history. But then again, providing that trail directional etiquette signage as well, mile markers. These are some of the sign types that we would typically see for trails, and something that we would integrate within our system. And I believe that's all we have for today. Next steps would be for us to further the sign design that you've seen here into our 50% design development set, and have a few checkpoints with our steering committee for the refinement of this design and kind of the further development of this design, and starting to look at our messaging and location plans for these sign types, and start our construction documents for the system. So that's kind of what we see as our next steps.
One of the things I'll just quickly mention here is, as we move through this process, to one of the elements that we are looking at incorporating beyond the static signs that you saw here are looking for like kind of prime areas to put more advanced or 21st century wayfinding as well. So things like interactive and electronic kiosks that can either interact with people's phones or provide just a different type of experience versus a more static wayfinding sign.
Okay, thank you. Just a comment, I love the gateway signs, the option, I could see those being at several locations. That could really be dynamic, I think. Member Eddie, do you have your hand up? Do you have a question or comment?
Yes. First off, I want to say, yeah, that was a great presentation, Brianna. Thank you for that. Very informative, and I liked all the pops of color. But I had a few different thoughts, and Melvin just answered a couple of them when I was just thinking about any digital pieces to this. But therefore, it draws me to say, would disability advocates be a part of the conversation? I'm just thinking of, all the different types of learners and abilities out there. Then the other pieces that I was thinking about was, a QR code, and that was mentioned. And then thinking of, is there a way, though this is a different body, to somehow tie these signs in with airport things that are going on at the airport, so that it's a seamless transition from, hey, we just arrived in Grand Rapids, we're heading downtown, and there's some connection there with, how one gets to the city, and then what happens when you are in the downtown area, just so that maybe things look similar. Maybe there's one key element, maybe it's that river piece that kind of carries through. And then I had a thought process about lighting, perhaps solar lights over some of the signs that aren't digital, so that, during the winter when it gets dark a little earlier, the signs are still lit. You can still see the sign. And then my last piece is more of a soapbox advocacy for internet downtown, free internet downtown.
That would be awesome, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And just a comment really quick. Yep. And I love everything that you mentioned, and we're kind of in that same line of thought of integrating for interactive kiosks where we kind of have these high active pedestrian traffic areas, and kind of getting that exposure and that kind of benefit from having a digital sign out there. We definitely want to be mindful of where we have power and so forth. But yes, we want to integrate QR codes that are using technology that can sort of read audibly the information that you're seeing on the sign for our visually impaired users. And we've kind of recommended that for our kiosks and for Skywalk, having a QR code that leads to an app that can read that information and kind of read the maps that you're seeing. To kind of help those users, and for our multilingual audiences as well. But too, I think that it's great to have that either it's a touchscreen kiosk or something that at least has that QR code that gets us to that 21st century wayfinding in the areas that we need it most. So yeah, totally agree with everything that you've mentioned.
Jermail, I just wanted to mention too that Disability Advocates of Kent County is also a listed consultant on the project. So if you look at the cover of the presentation, they're listed too with RLR and Progressive AE as a consultant.
So Melvin, who else is on the design team? Is someone from Experience Grand Rapids on the team?
Yeah, so our steering committee is pretty robust. We have representation from Experience GR. We have several business owners. We have I'm going to butcher it, Rick. I think it's AHC Hospitality has representation as well.
That's not that hard to say, Melvin.
I was just trouble remembering if it was correct. Yeah, so we have a pretty robust team. We have some residents from downtown.
Someone from the Boss Place, I assume?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we have a pretty good list. I think there's 15, 16 members on the committee as a whole right now.
Okay, good. Member McNeely, do you have a question or comment?
Real quick, just some comments. I think it's great work, and a lot of the feedback that Jamal had, I thought was awesome and on point. If memory serves correct regarding the airport, I believe parts of the property out at the airport are actually the city's. And so that would be a really interesting tie-in if that gateway sign could be brought out there. On the gateway sign, I noticed in the current rendering that it didn't have that Calder tie that was connected throughout the rest of the signage. So just calling that out, that if you, for consistency's sake, you might want to consider adding the Calder to the gateway. And then with the idea of making them interactive, it might be interesting to look at technologies that allow for a cell-based call button that went to the city's 311 desk. So if somebody had a hard time reading or understanding where they're at or needed multilingual access, somebody, a live operator could help them. Those are my comments.
Thank you. That's great for us to know. Yep.
That's great. Thanks, Greg.
Any other comments or questions? Great report. Great start, Brianna.
I had one other thing, if I may.
Sure.
Along the lines of those who are serving on the committee, I'm not sure if this would be, I feel like this might be a good place to say, you know, is there anyone, and maybe they're already represented there, but anyone that's outside of the downtown area to serve as well. I'm thinking of those groups that we say we want to attract downtown that may live in the outskirts, that may live in 49507 or what have you. But maybe within the groups that you, Melvin, mentioned, maybe there's already representatives from other communities there. So I just wanted to put that out there so that folk can say, that they too had a say in what the downtown wayfinding might look like.
Sounds good. Any other questions? Well, thank you, Melvin and Brianna. Nice report, and we look forward to the 50% DD, the 100% DD, and the CD, and the implementation of signage. So,
Thank you,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thank you for having us.
thank you.